From the grind to the glory, one man's journey proves that heart, hustle, and determination change the game. This is Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., where adversity is met head-on and champions are made. Here's George.
Welcome to Catch as Catch Can. I'm George Tinsley Sr., former professional athlete, entrepreneur, author, and your host. This is a space where we sit down with leaders who face real challenges, learned real lessons, and kept moving forward.
Turning obstacles into opportunity.
Hello, today we have with us Greg Foster. Greg is an NBA champion, corporate consultant, entrepreneur, and after 13 years of playing in the NBA, his 13-year career, and 8 years of collegiate and professional coaching, Greg is successfully transformed into business, founding both a real estate firm and a Florida-based chapter boat service. He's currently consults with R. Robert W. Baird and serves as a board of director for the Legends of Basketball. A dedicated family man, Greg has been happily married to his wife, Victoria, for 33 years and has 3 children. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we've been super glad to have you also. I've had the guys looking out there trying to catch you and make sure we got some dates so we could dive into your rich background. So why don't you start off just telling us a little bit about Oakland and where it all began and growing up in Oakland and a lot of great players around that area.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, George, growing up in Oakland, it definitely created a thick skin. Number one, I'll say that. I played during a great era of basketball, played with greats like Antonio Davis, the president of our Legends of Basketball Association, Gary Payton, Jason Kidd, Brian Shaw, Isaiah Ryder, Mark McCatherine, some guys that, the general public wouldn't know, but it was a great time to be a ball player in that city. And in a way, we were trailblazers for kids who wanted to pick up basketball at a serious level and use it as a tool to go to school. And that's kind of what we did. And it felt good to be able to be one of the first guys out there that put Oakland on the map.
Well, that's, you hear a lot about the athletes that come out of Oakland. How early in your childhood did you pick up playing basketball?
So, being a tall kid, they found me. And I was probably, competitively speaking, probably started playing in the 3rd grade. It was just one of those gangly kids who's trying to catch up with his body.
Right.
He was really good at first, for sure. It took me some time to catch up with and have the athleticism necessary to play at a high level. I had the opportunity to play with an incredible point guard in Gary Payton, who was my high school teammate, AAU teammate, and he just made the game easy for everybody, in particular me.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was not going to college with him because he made the game that easy for me. So you grow up and you have different attitudes and you don't think of things down the road the way they can play out, and a little ego gets involved. So we ended up going our separate ways. But he was always a great teammate, still a great friend. And if I could have done it differently, I would have probably been in an Oregon State uniform, or maybe both of us would have went to UTEP. So I don't know. That's one of those life lessons, those mistakes that you kind of look back and say, damn, I wish I would have done it differently.
So Greg, tell us, with the neighborhood area that you grew up in, was it the same neighborhood as the Jason Kidd? Was it all of you guys were in one particular area?
Well, actually, we were spread out a little bit. I think Jason was in a part of Oakland, which I would consider North Oakland. Me and Gary grew up in East Oakland. And then Antonio, we grew up in West Oakland. So, Antonio and I were rivals back then when we were in high school. We were 2 biggest guys in the city. And he was from West Oakland, I was from East Oakland. And back then you always came together. We always played ball at Cal Berkeley or found a court there in the neighborhood that we could all get together and play and challenge each other and get better. And that's how we kind of did that. And then, of course, we all, with AAU just coming on the scene, just becoming big at that time. We all played on the same AAU team for the most part. At least Gary and Antonio did. Jason was a year younger. Brian Shaw was a year older. And Isaiah Ryder was a year or two younger too. So, but we had some really competitive and very talented AAU teams back then.
At that time, was there a pro team in the area?
So yeah, the Golden State Warriors obviously weren't what they are now, but I grew up watching guys like Purvis Short, who's one of my childhood heroes, Sleepy Floyd, a lot of our membership, Joey Berry Carroll, Terry Teagle, and then, there was Marciunas, Arvidas Marciulonis, and guys like that coming up. But it was always fun. You can get a ticket back then. No problem getting a ticket to go see the Golden State Warriors. But
when I graduated, I was drafted by the Oakland Oaks out there in 1969. I was the number 2 pick by Oakland and picked by number 6 in the 6th round with the Chicago Bulls. And I chose Oakland based off of the climate, Chicago versus Oakland. And also Oakland was offering money up front. The ABA teams were offering money up front because of the competition with the NBA. The NBA, you had to go and try out several different times to see, to make the team. There was only like 10 teams in each league at that state. And so Oakland, which had Rick Barry was there, Larry Brown, Warren Jabali, Henry Logan, some of the names that, Larry Brown, as I mentioned, Larry Brown was point guard out there. So, but when I signed with them, the team was sold, and we went to Washington. It was the Washington Capitals at that particular time. So I was just wondering if at that time, Rick Barry had left the San Francisco team at that time, right?
Yeah, but he was there for a while. I mean, I was probably too young to really remember his glory years, but yeah, ultimately I was the next generation removed. Right. So, yeah.
So what were some of the obstacles that you encountered as you were growing up in the area? I know basketball was an area of safety and so forth, but there were a lot of other things that a lot of former players go through, different hardships that they had to face. Was there anything that presented a challenge for you?
Oakland was a very tough city, as you know, and has a tough history, but I actually credit it for giving me the kind of aggression and competitiveness that was necessary to survive at the NBA level for all those years. So back then, as kids, you really didn't look at it like that. You knew it was tough, it was rough, but ultimately you were just a kid and you were just trying to do the best you could to grow up and become a success in your respective area. The other thing I would say about that, the guys in the hood that were, hustlers or whatever you want to call it, doing their thing, that they respected athletes and didn't allow us to get involved in the criminal elements that are out there. I don't know if you could say that, about most cities today. I think that's changed a little bit. Back then, they respected the fact that we had a future in the sport. So therefore, we were, for lack of a better way of putting it, protected to a certain degree.
Right. Yeah, and I think that holds true with most cities where once a guy has a name and is known as a great player and has a future ahead of them, the guys the tough guys kind of form a shelter for them and support them, unless that player just wanted to get involved and so forth, and which would lead you down the wrong path. So your high school team, how did y'all do in high school? Did you win the state championship?
We were really good, but we came up short. We came up short in the state championship. There was, probably one of my defining moments as a high school basketball player. We were in the state playoffs. Gary fouled out of the game early, which is unheard of. And, everybody started panicking and throwing me the ball. Yeah. and I found out I could shoot the ball. I mean, literally that game, I think I was 10 for 10 and the ball was going in for me. And but we ended up losing, but I had this great game. And, it kind of sent me off into a path where I felt like I was a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of how big guys plays the game. Step out on the floor and shoot the ball. But back then, that's not how big guys play.
Right.
So I was always running into that wall, so to speak, with the coaches that I played with. I played for, I should say. But ultimately, yeah, we had a really good high school basketball team. We were just short of being great.
Well, you certainly had a dynamic duo with the two of you guys. Did you all come out the same year?
Yeah, yes, we did.
Okay.
Interesting story there. I eventually ended up going to UCLA. I was heavily recruited coming out of Skyline High School. Gary was getting recruited also. St. John's gave him a scholarship. Something happened. They reneged on the scholarship, which kind of sent Gary scrambling to find a school. UTEP was also one of my top schools at the time. They had Tim Hardaway at the time, too. UTEP had offered to, they offered me a scholarship, but they basically told me if you get Gary to come, you can bring Gary with you and another teammate of mine. And, I ended up going to Los Angeles quite a bit to play on an AAU team with Stacey Augman, Scott Williams, Stevie Thompson, a number of great players. Kind of got used to the whole LA scene and made the decision to go to UCLA. I think Gary actually wanted to go to UTEP along with Antonio. That's where Antonio went to school too. Mm-hmm. When I decided to go to UCLA, they pulled the rug on Gary going and my other high school teammate. When I look back at it now, I'm like, wow, that could have been a really good team.
Right.
Tim Hardaway, Antonio Davis, and myself. But so I probably blew UTEP a national championship by going to UCLA. And they let me know about it too. Trust me.
So you went to UCLA first?
I did.
For a year and then transferred later to UTEP?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Went to UCLA, played under Walt Hazard, played with Reggie Miller, Pooh Richardson. A very good team, won a Pac-10 championship. And then after my sophomore year, decided to transfer.
What went into that? What made you decide to leave UCLA?
Youth.
Okay.
Being pig-headed.
Okay.
And I can say that now looking back, I think it probably would have worked out just fine had I stayed. But, when you're young and dumb and you don't know any better, you make silly decisions. Not that it didn't turn out well. I mean, my decision to go to UTEP turned out just fine. I married an incredible lady that I've been married to for forever.
Right.
It feels just like yesterday, though, honey. And,
we got that on camera.
So, and then I played with greats like Tim Hardaway and Antonio, and played for a great coach in Don Haskins, who is historical and blazing a trail for African Americans in this game. Yeah, I don't lose much sleep over it at all.
It's funny how that those kind of situations happen. We won the championship in my freshman year. I was a starter. Our second year, we had our best team at Kentucky Wesleyan College, D2. And in those days, D2 was on a much higher level. And Earl Monroe, Walt Frazier, all those guys all played in D2. But my coach left in my sophomore year, and myself and a team Dallas Thornton, who played with the Globetrotters 17 years, we were going to transfer with him. And he sat us down, told us we made a commitment. We needed to stay there, which was really the best thing that happened to us. But we thought the grass was greener on the other side. But we stayed and we won 2 more championships. So my junior and my senior year, Dallas graduated and he was a year ahead of me. But and I met my wife and they're in college as well. So I can identify with a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Best move I made. So, okay, you go to Texas and you play there. How was the atmosphere there?
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, back then UTEP was a big name. We like to call it, we were the Gonzaga before Gonzaga was Gonzaga.
Okay.
That best of the mid-majors, so to speak, and sold out every night, had an incredible league, played in the WAC back then, and it was very competitive. A lot of great, just natural rivalries. New Mexico State, I love to play against BYU. And so, it was a great league, great time, great college town. They love their basketball. They still do to this day. They're a little down because, NIL and money is at the forefront of everything now. So, it was an incredible experience. Great people in El Paso, great history. And, actually made it home when I decided to retire from playing for a few years before moving out to Florida. And I would always go back in the off season and maintained a home there in the off season.
Yeah. That's great. Now, when you are drafted and by the Bullets.
Yep, I was drafted by Washington in '90 when they were still the Bullets. Played for West Unseld. We didn't have great teams, but we had great people.
Yeah.
Dale Eccles, John Williams, Harvey Grant. Got to play with Bernard King my rookie year. That was an experience. Yeah, I mean, I learned the NBA life and what it took to survive in the NBA and the level of conditioning that it took. And so I had a good time. Even though, we weren't winning a lot of ball games, I still had a great time.
Yeah. Wes Unseld and I grew up together in Louisville, and he was my daughter's godfather.
Oh,
so,
wow. I know all about it. Wes was a tough guy.
Yes, he was.
And he demanded you be tough too, and it served me well playing for Wes.
He and his family from Louisville, and his father-in-law there, who had the church there, and his wife was a member of our church with my wife. So we knew one another from back in the area. Yeah, those days, you guys had pretty rough seasons during that time. The team was still pulling together. Who was the stars of the team at that time when you were there?
So my rookie year, it was Bernard King, Darrell Walker, Purvis Ellison from Louisville.
Yeah.
Harvey Grant was a starter. John Williams was dealing with some knee issues at that time. Dale Eccles was an on and off starter. But yeah, Charles Jones was a center. So I learned a lot from Charles on, how to play with leverage because, he was undersized. I learned a lot. I think the number one thing I learned was just, again, the level of conditioning necessary to stay at the NBA level. So, yeah, I don't regret those years at all. I grew up really fast. For Wes, like I just mentioned, the level of toughness that you had to have to survive was implemented early on in my career.
So the big change from college ball to professional ball, tell us a little bit about preparation and what actually went into basketball career moving from college to pro ball.
Yeah, for me, it was the speed of the game. It moved a lot faster. And until you were there a little while, you really didn't see things in slow motion. I think you hear a lot being described as you're seeing the game slow down. And so once the game started to slow down for me, I really felt I belonged. But if I'm being honest, for the first 2-3 years, it was still really fast. I was amazed at the hand speed of guys. If you didn't protect that ball, I remember squeezing that ball so tight, heck, there's no way I could shoot it or even pass it. So you just didn't want it to get stolen or, create a turnover. But it was definitely the speed of the game. And for me as well, it was the size and strength of guys, so you had to get in the weight room. Guys were a lot bigger, a lot stronger, a lot more athletic at the NBA level.
So as you at the pro level, you've got a lot of free time in between practices and games and so forth. How did you totally focus on your basketball, or were you looking at life after basketball during that period?
Well, George, I'd like to sit up here and say, yeah, I had a plan in mind, and this is what I love to do outside of basketball, but I had no clue. It's true. It was all basketball for me. Like most basketball players, young basketball players, I should say, it's never going to end. So I'm going to have enough to carry me through. But I will say this. I had a great time, number one. Number two, as my career started, coming to an end, or you feel like it's coming to an end, you start listening, and start looking at some of the resources available, creating the relationships necessary to carry you into the afterlife, so to speak. And I did start to do that at that time, probably about 3 years out. I knew I wanted to get into real estate, so I started there. And so when I did retire, I had some mentors in that field that helped me.
As you were going through those first 10 years, was there any players on your specific teams that you looked up to that gave you advice, seemed to be the role model of what you wanted to develop off the court?
I wish I could say that there were more of them. The honest truth is there weren't a lot. As you know, when you go into an off season, guys are pretty private. And I don't know if that comes from them just wanting to get away from it all. And I even felt that way when I first retired. I just wanted to get away from the game. I just wanted to dumb it down and just be me. But if you wait too long, if you don't have a purpose or a passion, and you, in retrospect, if I could do it all over again, I probably would have jumped right into something. But part of that process was me finding that purpose and real passion that I had for something different. Real estate was a great way to solidify my finances from an investment standpoint. But is that something I really love to do? No, not really. Throw my heart and soul into it and had some success with it. And I think it really comes down to, for me, finding out what you're good at. So if I use basketball as an example, I think God is going to give you something that you're good at, but it might not necessarily be something that you love, right. But you can take that and parlay it into the ability to do something that you love. If you can secure yourself financially, then you can slowly try to morph into another area in your life, which is, of course, as you know, extremely important. And you've done a great job. You're a great example of that with what you've done with your business and your companies. So, but I think you are, unfortunately, a needle in the haystack. And that's kind of what we're trying to change, as we do this work with our member services committee and the Legends of Basketball.
Right. And we'll dive into that a little bit later, but I'm just wondering, of course, we got a lot of folks out there listening in, a lot of athletes out there listening in. As you were, when I was playing there, the younger guys were trying to emulate what some of the older guys were doing, both on and off the court. And some of the coaches at that time were not former players. They've just been come through the coaching. But during the time that you were coming through, you had coaches that had played the game, had played at the pro level, etc. Did those guys ever give you any advice and try to help you steer you down the road?
Honestly, when I look at guys like John Stockton or Karl Malone, to use them as an example, they end up doing really well in their respective businesses. They got into the car dealership business. I just wasn't at that level financially to be able to jump into that. Not that it couldn't have happened, but we didn't really talk about it. It was, to be honest with you, George, it was really basketball. And I wish that we did have more conversations like that. And I did reach out. Part of it is my own fault. Guys must reach out for that mentorship. And again, if your attitude is it's never going to end, it's number one, the wrong attitude to have, and you're not going to reach out and you're not going to set yourself up for that future. So I think that's one of those things that, I'm really passionate about at this point, is just trying to get guys to listen. Ultimately, you're not going to reach everybody, but it's not going to stop me from trying.
So as you are working on the membership committee with the Legends of Basketball, which we'll get to, but as you look back on the teams that you played with, a number of different teams, and you won in a championship in LA. Did you get involved in the community there and doing service, community give back, or things of that nature?
Absolutely. Everywhere we went, a lot of it was team oriented in terms of, the PR department for your prospective teams would set stuff up. But I did do things on my own, doing some stuff with some car dealerships in terms of, commercials and community outreach and camps and things of that nature. So I was always involved. Probably wish I was more involved, but ultimately I think it's a great way to keep your name out there and give back to people that support you.
So as you ended your career and what did you do there as you ended your career?
Yeah. So when I ended my career, like I mentioned to you earlier, I knew I was interested in real estate. So I moved back to El Paso, Texas. I had some mentors that helped me get into the real estate acquisition part of the real estate business. And that's kind of where I started. That I met through them. And ultimately, I got involved with doing what's called private lending. I know you know what that's all about, but for our listeners, it was private real estate lending. So I would loan money to help people buy homes that didn't have great credit, poor credit, or zero credit, and it would hold the first lien on that mortgage. So for me, it was basic numbers, it was basic common sense. And as opposed to the stock market, let's say, I had a bricks and mortar investment that I could fall back on, and to give you an example of what a deal would look like, if it's I'll give you a small example, $100,000 home, the person would have to come in with 30% down. So they have 30%, 30,000 in that deal. And then I'd loan the 70,000. Of course, it's at a higher interest rate. But as far as I was thinking, my investment was secured by that home and $30,000 worth of equity. And 90% of the time, no one's going to walk away from that kind of equity. They'll try to refinance you out, and or you take that property back. So that's what I got involved with initially. And then I was talked into creating a mortgage company that did regular loans. And we had about 19 loan officers at the time. We're really blowing and going. This was in 2006. And then 2008 hit. And 2008 hit and the bubble burst. And, I had loan officers going from making $50,000 a month to making $50,000 a year, and just couldn't sustain it anymore. I kept doing my thing on the private side, but ultimately had to switch gears and to move on. And so that's when I got into coaching. Okay. Tim Floyd showed up at UTEP and became the head coach there. Tim Floyd had recruited me back in the good old days. So Tim ended up back in El Paso, and I called him up and said, "Hey, coach, I need a job." I had this long career. I had a real estate business, but I still didn't have my degree. So I couldn't go in college. So Tim told me, "You go back to, school, Greg, and get your degree. I'll hire you next year." So here Greg goes back to UTEP, and the University of Phoenix, and fast track that degree. Right. And I was literally going to school with my nephews and nieces and my friends, It was a little embarrassing at times, but, I had to do it. Yeah. Did that. I worked for free that first year for Tim. I volunteered, got my school taken care of, and he hired me the next year. So I coached at UTEP for another 2 years, and then went on to coach in the NBA for another 6-7 years. And that's how my coaching career got started. So thanks to the 2008 bubble burst.
Yeah, that'll do it. So as you started coaching, how did you feel about that, having been a player and at pro level, and college and pro level, and now relating back to the younger players?
Oh, it was a different animal. It was a different animal. These kids are different, and it takes a lot of time and patience. Where when we played, George, it was, the coach, he asked you to do something, you did it. Right. And that was that. And he might not ask you that nicely. Right. So that's not how it is today. And you can't coach these kids today. I tried it. And, had to get nose to nose with some kids. But looking back at it now, if you want to be involved in coaching, you have to make the decision and the commitment to doing it differently. Differently means really putting a lot of energy into positive communication, putting a lot of energy into a lot of watching film, because these kids want to know why. When you ask them to do something or tell them to do something, they want to know why. And so you can't take it personally when you're asked that, and you have to find a way to reach them, because they're very inquisitive. They want to know why. And, coming from an old school perspective and playing for coaches like Jerry Sloan and Wes Unseld, that was just, I wasn't used to it. Right. I had some bumps in the road in relationships with players, but ultimately I realized, okay, I got to be the one to do it differently. This is just how it is if I want to be involved.
And you moved on into the pros, and getting in with the pros. How did that? What was the difference there?
Oh, it was a lot more work than being a player. I'll tell you that much. Yeah. It wasn't 2-3 hours a day, then go out and do your thing and go have some beers with the fellas and then go do it again the next day. It's okay. Go do that. Go practice for 3-4 hours a day. Go to the office, break down, the film for the next team that you got to do a scouting report on, and then guys would come back in the evening to shoot. So you're in that office all day. So it's easily 12, 14-hour days to go along with all the travel. So it's not something that, and I know a lot of NBA players would be really good at it, but it's a different mindset when it comes to coaching. It's a lot of time and effort put into it.
During that time, Greg, how many coaches were on the staff?
So, there was still staffs were starting to get larger. So you had 4 upfront guys. You normally had 3 or 4 guys behind the bench, and then you had your training staff. So you still had about 8-9 guys that were on the bench, but 4 up front. And I was fortunate to be up front my whole coaching career. But if I'm being honest, it got old to me. I wanted to move on to do something else. And I always knew in the back of my mind, even though I did not have that mentorship that we spoke of earlier, that I wanted to do something different outside of basketball.
So the coaching comes to an end, and then you're stepping out and you're doing something on the outside. Walk us through what you're doing presently.
So coaching comes to the end. We moved back to El Paso, Texas. I'm thinking, okay, this is where all our relationships are as far as business is concerned. Purchased a boat during COVID, big mistake. But ultimately, people were getting back outdoors. I always wanted to buy a boat. We always had boats, but this boat was a fishing boat. I love the fish. It has always been a passion of mine, even going back to my days growing up in Oakland. And that trips people out, a kid from Oakland. How do you get into fishing?
Right.
My mom used to drop me and my boys off at the 7th Street Pier in West Oakland, and we'd fish all day long. And for whatever reason, I fell in love with it. So bought the boat when I was in El Paso, started doing some guide trips at a lake that was about 2.5 hours away. That got to be a strain. And I told my wife, I said, look, we got to get around some water. This is what I want to do. So I literally pulled out a map, and I'm living in the Stewart, Port St. Lucie area now. I got Lake Okeechobee 30 minutes this way. I got another lake 30 minutes north. I've got the intercoastal and the ocean 20 minutes to the east. So I surrounded myself with all these bodies of water. And so when we moved out here, I made the commitment to get my captain's license, because you can't take people fishing if you don't have a United States Coast Guard license. And so I went through that class, which was extremely difficult, and got my captain's license and started a charter service. And what I'd say about that is it's scary trying to turn what is a true passion into a business. Thank God I did play basketball and coach and was able to make a little money. I'd be starving if I had to live off the money I make as a charter captain. But in the same breath, I think it works out just perfect, because I don't want it to feel like a job.
Right.
So I take people out fishing. I do every kind of fishing you can imagine, from saltwater, open water, intercoastal, bass, crappie, and I enjoy doing it. So, so turned a passion into a business. And, the thing that I had to come to realization with is that just because it's your passion and just because you can turn it into a business doesn't mean you're going to get rich doing it. And that's kind of one of the mental blocks that we as professional athletes struggle with. We think that, we can jump into something else that's going to sustain the kind of lifestyle that we're able to create with our basketball. That's not necessarily the case. In some cases, you can even do better. I mean, you're a perfect example, George, of how successful a guy can be away from the game of basketball, doing something different. But I think you're the exception, not the rule. And I'm not trying to dissuade people. I'm just trying to say that was my reality. And to finish up my thought with that is, I would say, the first $500 I made as a fishing charter captain was every bit as meaningful as any amount of money I made in the NBA. So right. If there's guys out there that want to follow their passion, they just got to understand that, man, it's going to feel good. It might not pay all the bills, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I think that is the key, that you're doing something that you love, and it's not work. It's something you enjoy, and as long as you're able to maintain a living and pay the bills, you're happy. It's not trying to be the richest person in the world and to make all the money. It's enjoying life, and those people that go out fishing with you, as long as they're enjoying what they're doing. Why don't we flash up on the screen how people can reach you if they're looking for a captain to take them out on the floating out there fishing? I think we have there we go. Walk us through that.
Yeah, that's my website. And I can be found. You can find that website at -anglers.com. So that's -anglers.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Greg Foster Fishing or Greg Foster. And just give me a shout. All my information is there. You can shoot me an email. You can give me a call or a text, and we can go out and get it done, Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you're a novice or an expert. We take kids out. We take very seasoned fishermen out, and it's a blast. It's a blast.
Tell us about one of the most exciting trips you've had here with the passengers.
Well, I tell you what, probably the most exciting time I've had was actually with my son. It was on Father's Day, and that's him right there. Okay. And he caught a sailfish, a nice sized sailfish, on last Father's Day. And it's the biggest fish he's ever caught. Wow. And, yeah, we had a blast. That took him about 45 minutes to bring in. So I think I always have a better time with the kids, especially if it's their first time, just to see the smile on their face. I've had kids, come in with charts and chart all the different kind of fish they've caught. And then it gets competitive out there too, So if you get the seasoned fishermen out there, they're competing with each other, and they're razzing each other just like we did in the locker room.
Exactly.
It's pretty fun. Yeah. So that's my son there catching that sailfish. I'm just trying to hold on to him.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So
that's a great Father's Day.
Yeah, it really was. So yeah, I think the mantra that, you had on the screen a little earlier that I live by is just taking off the mask. And that's what I try to share with guys. And what does taking off the mask mean? It means don't let your ego continue to dictate and control your decision making and what you want to do moving forward. Because basketball is such a short-lived career, and it gives us a semblance of importance, belonging, and we all love that adulation, right? So when it stops, it's extremely hard to get into something that isn't satisfying to one's ego. And so for me, I struggled with that for many years, and I still do from time to time, but I have that awareness level now that, so if I wanted to go back into coaching, do I really want to go back into coaching? What am I doing it for? Am I doing it for the money? Am I doing it because that's what other people expect me to do, right? So we can get caught up into that too, doing things that everyone else expects you to do, but that might not necessarily be what's fulfilling to you. So taking off that mask is critical. It's important. And, the competitive nature that we all had to have to survive in the ABA, the NBA, WNBA, Globetrotters, whatever it may be, was so extremely important to keep you there. When you walk away from the game and you're at home communicating your wife or your kids, that old bravado, that doesn't work anymore. You're talking to somebody in the boardroom, you got to pick your words wisely. And who's got to be different. And that's probably the biggest advice I can give to anybody is, when you walk away from the game, a game that you were able to control your level of improvement. You can lift more weight, you can eat better, you can get stronger, you can run faster, you can shoot more, you can watch more film. In real life, it's a little different. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you got to be able to lean on people, right? You got to have a mentor like George Tinsley, someone to direct your steps into doing something different. And so, yeah, that's kind of what that taking off the mask means. Don't let your ego make those decisions for you anymore.
That's good insight there. And it's I'm sure you've mentored a lot of great mentees out there. As you have gotten involved with the Retired Players Association, Legends of Basketball, what made you get involved, and what is your personal goal in bringing to the association?
My personal goal, and the reason I got involved, is because I really want to help guys transition from professional basketball to real life. We all know the struggles that are associated with making that transition, and that's my passion. And I understand that outside of fishing, that's probably right on up there with the most important thing for my life, because to me, giving back is so fulfilling. And that's the real reason that I'm doing. Selfishly, I want to give back because it makes me feel good. Right. And that's what life is all about, ultimately. Otherwise, you're always chasing something, So we have all this experience, all this knowledge. It's time to give it to somebody. And that's the biggest piece of all this for me, George.
So what is the average lifespan of a pro athlete today at both the NBA, WNBA, and of course Globetrotters, that league kind of goes on. But WNBA, NBA, what do you think?
Back when I played, Georgia, was 3 years. I think now it's somewhere between 3 and 5 years, if you're lucky. I think guys have better food, better trainers, travel's a lot easier. So I think they're able to last. They're taking better care of themselves. But even if you look at that, 3 to 5 years is not a long time.
No.
You have to capitalize on relationships while you're there. It's not impossible. You can do it. Got to have a plan. Even if you don't have a plan, I don't care if you're 25 or 75. If you still need help, then we need to help them. That's kind of how I view it. I see in my short, period of time being on the Membership Services Committee and being on the board of directors, there's still a lot of guys living in resentment. Guys deal with those things. It's kind of sad to see, but I also look at it as a challenge. They need direction, and they need to be celebrated for who they are now and what they're doing now. And it doesn't matter how big or small. It doesn't matter if you're a fishing captain, you work for UPS, you have 60 franchises. We all need to celebrate those people and celebrate the victories, because to our ego, it might not seem like a big deal, because we're used to playing in front of 20,000 people, right? And being treated a certain kind of way because of it. Yeah. So, like they say, when the lights turn off, it can get lonely. And we just need to hold guys up, let them know that they're worth it.
Yeah, and our audience, I think that as they think of NBA players or professional players, that everybody's made money and is living a great lifestyle and so forth. But as we know, and one of our main objectives, all of our main objectives who are involved, is to help those who are out there that are somewhat lost, and there's some that are homeless that are out there. You kind of mentioned what you have seen so far as players that really need help.
Yeah. I think number one, getting the message out there that there is help for them. A lot of guys get lost in the shuffle. Like I mentioned earlier, there was a period of time where I just wanted to get away from it totally. I think that's a extremely important time to try to connect to these guys, because they try to go off on their own. They just want to get away from it all. And that's where things start to happen and become problematic. So we're trying to prevent that. But ultimately, we also need guys to buy in. We need them to get involved. You don't have to isolate. You do need to understand what benefits are available to you and what resources are available to you, because there are grants out there that can help guys that are in need and that are struggling. And I'm happy that you're a part of that subcommittee, man. I think that's going to be a huge part of what we do moving forward. Those scholarships and grants have helped me. I mean, I have a daughter that's in medical school, and she was the beneficiary of a scholarship who are the legends of basketball, and it really helped her. So I think if I could do one thing right now, I would spend a bunch of money marketing and letting everybody know what we do, and letting them know what's available to them.
Right. Good point. I want to sidestep a little bit here. Tell us about your family. That's a very important part.
I got a lovely wife, Victoria. We've been married for 33 plus years. We met when we were at UTEP. She played volleyball. I played basketball. And we've been going strong ever since, not to be confused with it being perfect.
Right.
We all have bumps and bruises and scars. Yeah. But she gave me 3 incredible kids. My oldest daughter, Victoria Marie, she played volleyball at the Air Force Academy, along with my middle daughter, Colette. She played volleyball also at the Air Force Academy. So my oldest lives in LA. She's a makeup artist out there, doing an incredible job with it. Colette, that I just mentioned, she's in her 3rd year of medical school at Old Dominion, which is also considered Eastern Virginia Medical School. And then my son, Junior, lives in Miami down the road, and he is in real estate acquisitions. He's got his own real estate company, and he's killing it. So the biggest part of all that is they're out of dad's pocket. They're all doing well on their own, and I'm extremely proud of them.
That's great. You got married when you first went into the pros, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, probably about my 3rd or 4th year in the league. We dated up until then, and she always is on me about that. Why'd it take so long? But I didn't want to be one of those horror stories. We see it happening all the time.
Right.
Percentages are crazy, unfortunately, that the divorce rate amongst, NBA athletes, specifically when they retire, is way too high. Yeah. So another reason this work is so important that we're doing with the Membership Services Committee.
Yeah. So that's great. So your son, he played D1 ball?
Yeah, he went to Gonzaga initially, played with, Brandon Clark, God rest his soul, Rui Hachimura, and that team, Josh Perkins. So they had a really good team. And then he transferred to St. Joe's, played in Philadelphia for a little while. Decided that basketball wasn't for him. He wanted to get into the real estate business. He's a real sharp kid, and he's doing really well with that.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure those skills paid off in the real estate. And tell us real quick who serves on the board with you today.
So the board with me today, my membership service committee is Lionel Hollins, yourself, George Tinsley, Bruce Capers, Leslie Johnson, Herb Lang, Mo Evans, and a recent addition, Willie Davis, and a recent addition, Purvis Short, who's going to be helping us with the Transition Services Committee.
Okay. Yeah. And who's on the main board, the national board?
Oh, so the main board is, you're stumping me on this now, George. The main board is myself, Chu Smith, there's Cedric Toney, who else there? Eddie Gill, just to name a few, but incredibly, Major Jones is another name. Incredibly, Sam Vincent. Thank you, George. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, understanding that you're a new member here, Rolando Tucker.
Rolando Tucker is another great young addition.
Yeah.
So I've been so inundated with putting our membership services committee board together and really working hard to just give ourselves a platform to have all the information necessary to go out.
Right.
Help. And again, like I mentioned, let everybody know what resources are available to them. So if I missed any names out there, forgive me. Yeah. We're working hard at it.
And how many chapters do we have now?
Chapters we have, I want to say, let me pull that up because we just added, I know we're working on Portland, so bear with me, George.
Sure.
Let me see here. Yeah, I think, with everything that we've talked about in terms of where we're moving forward with our chapters, we're really working at giving our chapter presidents a lot more responsibility and leeway, because I think we all understand that all of our chapters hold the key to getting this information out that we talked about. So
they're very key, and I think we have one in just about all the NBA cities that are out there. The WNBA and NBA, a lot of those being the same areas. But to your point, they are very key to the success of the overall organization.
So my apologies for that delay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 chapters now.
Okay. Yeah.
So that would include Atlanta, Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, Detroit, Houston, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Miami, Minnesota, New York, Orlando, Philly, and Phoenix.
Outstanding. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So if any of you out there and you live in any of these areas and you don't know about the Legends of Basketball chapters, please reach out to any of the guys mentioned here to get involved. Greg, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on our program. We've got a lot of great information from you. You've been very successful. The one thing I want to note, I'm sure my son will reach out to you because he loves fishing, and he would love to take a group of his buddies down and go out with you, do some fishing. So look forward to hearing from him. Yeah, that would be great. But we really appreciate you taking the time out and being on the program and informing us of your career and what you're doing, what you have done, and what you're doing today. And I'm excited myself about you being the chair of our committee and the things that I think that you will bring to the board and where we're going. You and, of course, Antonio's leadership and Chu's continued leadership with the board. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. And I thank you too, George, for having me on and for being a part of my membership committee. And I look forward to leaning on your experience too. So
we'll make that happen.
Okay, man.
All right. So thank you, and we'll call that a wrap.
This has been Catch as Catch Can. The game isn't over. Your success story is just getting started. Head to TinsleySpeaks.com for exclusive content, resources, and opportunities. Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., a production of Live Stream Editors.